Hi, everyone. This is Suzanne Wagner. And my friend, who is the editor for my book, um, is a wonderful friend of mine. And they've been a friend forever. And one of the things that, of course, they always say to writers is writing isn't about writing, it's about rewriting. And so I am working on what is chapter 11, and I thought I would share it with you because we're combining things and pulling things together, and I'm sure there will be more modifications of this, but I just wanted you to be a part of this journey, because some of you, as you go through my blogs, will be like, oh, some of this is, coming from other moments that I was telling the story, and I'm weaving different parts together. So this is currently what I am working on with chapter 11. It will change, I'm sure, because it changes multiple times, but this is where I'm at this point. I wake up to the tolling of the morning bells. The reverberation has a solemn tone, and in the darkness of the room, the sound seems to groan in a monotone like a heart that has been turned to stone. I hear the nuns moving about in the rooms on either side, and I smell the distinct odor of this new place mixing with many old memories. The building clearly has been here for a long time. Situated towards the outskirts of Berlin's west side, the tree-lined avenues seem to have survived better and taken fewer hits during the wars. I hear the nuns, one at a time, get up and dressed. I hear them walking down the hallway with their heavy shoes and the tinkling of their rosaries as they hold on the sides of their habits. They move without talking, leaving me with the feeling of their inward focus of merciful self-reliance. The externals matter little to them, and I can feel how much they matter to me. The world they are seeking is deep inside, and today I am going to a very new and very larger outside. I think excitedly about this new chapter in my life, so different from the nuns in their quiet procession to Mass. I hear them all leave, and I am free to get up and go about gathering up myself for this day. I go down the hall to the bathroom, shower, and do my hair. I have prepared point shoes, and my leotards and tights are laying on the bed, anxious to dance. I pack my dance bag with all the ballerina essentials and then go down the stairs to breakfast. Sitting silently in a chair is a nun with a bright smile on her face. She greets me with an enthusiastic Guten Morgen, and I walk in to find myself facing a veritable feast of German breakfast goodies. This sweet nun speaks no English, and I speak no German. We talk with each other and laugh when it is clear that we are not understanding what the other is trying to say. She is in her 30s and so very kind. She has soft-boiled eggs for me and more types of breads than I have ever seen that are sliced and ready to go. Accompanying the breads are a vast assortment of cheeses, salamis, pickles, coffee, tea, cream, and sugar. Fortunately, German and English have similar roots in their languages, and so coffee is Kaffee, tea is Tee, bread is Brot, cheese is Käse, and cup is Tasse. Smiling with newfound confidence, I recognize that maybe this might not be as hard as I thought. We begin a playful exchange that is about her pointing to an object and saying its name, and I then say it in English. She smiles and we both nod. Then I say it in German and then she says it in English. Then we laugh. Occasionally, we have to help each other with certain pronunciations. She was to be my first German teacher. We would continue this ritual while I stayed with the nuns. It was extremely helpful. After an eventful and informative morning, I go to the Mother Superior's office where I find her sitting writing on a ledger. She gracefully stands up as I come in and she respectfully asks me how I slept. I laugh and say, "Thank you, I slept very well." She then inquired if I had eaten breakfast. I laughed and said, "Is that what you call it? To me it was a feast." She smiled and nodded politely, clearly happy that I had approved. She then held her hand out gracefully for me to have a seat. She then explained how to get to the U-Bahn and how to get the correct subway to get to the Deutsche Oper stop. Then she told me how to get eine Karte to be able to use the subway system. This was going to be extremely helpful, as I did not realize that I was going to be using this system for the next 4 months. She again explained the cost of the room and board. I agreed and signed some paperwork promising to pay. Then I was off with my map in hand to get to the subway, my Berlitz English-German dictionary, my ballet bag, and the excitement of a young girl beginning the greatest adventure of her life. I go to the theater without any complications. I go to the stage entrance where all theaters have one, and the guard escorts me to Gert Reinholm's office. While he is not there, the sweet secretary that picked me up at the airport was. She showed me the ins and outs of the backstage, dressing rooms, costumer areas, ballet studios, and the canteen, eating area for everyone. She showed me the boards where I was to get the information on rehearsals and the studio where class would always be. Then she escorted me into the dressing rooms for the corps de ballet and showed me to my spot and my locker. A few girls are there, and they look at me slightly curious, but do not say anything. I unpack my stuff, get dressed for class. As I am walking out the door, I almost run into a dancer that I was at SAB with the first summer in New York. Her name was Marina Hotchkiss, and she smiled instantly and gave me a surprised hug. I hugged back with great relief. At least I knew someone in this company. The theater was huge and intimidating. I had never seen such a place. This entire complex was the size of Lincoln Center, and I realized that it had more floors below ground for stage sets, costumes, and storage than it had above ground. It was a marvelous maze that would take me the entire 4 years to explore at appropriate moments. But now I had at least one person I knew, and she was going to be one of my dear friends for the next 4 years. I was to learn that the foreigners stuck together. We would become each other's family while we were there. We would have Sunday brunches together and help each other move apartments, paint walls, and discover the hidden treasures and places in Berlin. I get to class, and I do what I always do. I pick a corner that no one wants to stand in for class. I was not about to upset the other dancers even before I got started. Class was very different than I imagined. I was used to the quickness, light, and Balanchine-esque movement qualities of SAB. This was very different. The teacher was clearly Russian, and the class had a very heavy tone to my American-styled and trained body. While the structure of a ballet class is relatively similar the world over, there are many subtle differences that I noticed. For me, the class was harder than I expected, and the tempos were very slow to my taste. I was a thoroughbred colt wanting to run, and this felt like I had been yoked to a wagon with rocks. Clearly, strength was this company's focus, not speed. I realized that this was going to take some getting used to. The dancers were friendly and easygoing. I was deeply appreciative of that, but I was the new person, and everyone was getting used to each other. I went to the board to look at the rehearsal schedule only to realize that I was not anywhere on any list. Disappointed, I watched some rehearsals to see what they were like and how they were run. Gudrun Laban was the rehearsal directress, and she was a tough cookie. With short, dyed, flaming red hair, she ran rehearsals in both English and German, something that I deeply appreciated. Though when she spoke German, the sound was very hard, harsh, and forceful, but German is kind of like that. My joke, which is not going to be a joke, was that you have not been yelled at and scolded until you have been yelled at and scolded in German. Though when the Russians got going, it sounded like they were practically spitting on each other while they were talking. Gudrun was going to be one of my greatest gifts and teachers, and she was going to be a thorn in my side. Little did I know that for the next year and a half, it would seem that I was going to be her whipping post, and much of her negative focus was going to be put directly on me. This was nothing that I had really been prepared for, and she was a tough taskmaster. Behind her back, we called her the commandant, After all, I am a Leo and I got along with almost everyone. And at that time, I knew how to stay out of certain select people, out of the way of certain select people as well. I would soon come to believe that she hated me. One comes to that conclusion when one is yelled at every day in German for a year and a half. I would take the abuse from her and then go home to the nunnery and cry myself to sleep every night. I would then get on my knees and pray for me to find some understanding as to what I was doing that was making me such a target for Gudrun's wrath. I did not see that in her reality she was giving me attention and that she had decided to shape and mold me to her liking. I missed it because I honestly am not used to being yelled at as a form of love. Until that moment in time, most of my ballet teachers, while tough and demanding, were not mean-spirited. I did work with Arthur Mitchell for a season when I was 16 years old, and I did not understand why he kept hitting me. He was hitting my arms, legs, back, and shoulders. He was relentless, and I thought he hated me until people started coming up to me and saying how much Mr. Mitchell loved me and how he saw my special qualities and was eager to work with me. I learned in that moment that teachers can appear to be mean in order to get us to pay attention to certain parts of our body. In this new day and age, such things would probably not be allowed. But back then, it was more frequently used as a tool for training in dance than I had realized. Personally, that style of hard knocks motivation was never my liking. My teachers in Dallas had been, for the most part, extremely kind and caring. I considered them my emotional parents. Gudrun Laban was one of a kind. She clearly had a tough shell that had kept her going through the war and the Reconstruction. I am sure her personal history was one that I could have never survived. And to this day, I do not know what she went through, but it clearly shaped her, from her personality to the distinct lines on her face and the constant frown that she exhibited as she watched rehearsals. I kept trying to keep my compassionate thoughts on the surface of my awareness in an effort to find a way to try to understand her behavior and aggression towards me as she yelled at me in rehearsals. And that was often every day, like I said, for a year and a half. It was brutal. I did not understand what was going on. I tried to be sweet. I kept smiling and nodding. I attempted to do what she asked exactly, but it never seemed to change her behavior towards me. I tried to figure out if it was me personally she hated. Perhaps it was because I was an American and that she resented the Americans controlling her country. I tried to come up with any and all explanations and excuses for her behavior. I tried to look out through her eyes at me to see if I just looked like a baby to her. Perhaps she saw me as naive and not mature enough to be here. I tried to see if it was my personal dance style that was very SAB, New York City ballet style of movement that she hated, and she wanted me to have a more Russian look, but nothing worked. Nothing that I did seemed to make any sense or made any difference to her. I tried to be strong. Nope, that made her madder. I tried to be sweet. Then she looked at me like I was some manipulative child. I tried to be blank and not react. That did not stop her tirades at all. I finally decided that what she wanted was to break me. For some reason, she needed to see me break. Perhaps she needed the satisfaction of breaking my spirit. So I decided the next time she yelled at me that I would cry silently and put my head down, trying to hide it. Shockingly, that seemed to work. She backed off the daily tirades, and they went more weekly instead of daily. But what unfolded over the next 4 months was that I had class but no rehearsals. Ever. It was grueling, miserable, and I just wanted out. I stayed and watched rehearsals to try to learn choreography, but I was never in anything. The darkness of the Berlin winters were getting to me. I began to wonder, why am I here? I rationalized that I'm getting paid, but then questioned why I'm not really dancing. I began to question, why am I here again? The glimmer of some golden spotlight was beginning to fade and in the gloomy Berlin winter. I started to make up things in my mind that I was going to get fired. I thought, I don't know why, though I don't know why. I go into the mental chats in my head that no one in the staff likes me. I feel as if I'm getting along well enough with the dancers, that is except the German dancers. They were always a bit standoffish and would remain so until my 4th year in Berlin. But this was understandable. Their country had been invaded and conquered twice, and they still did not have the control of their own country back. Foreigners were suspect on a good day, and for good reason. So while I am not working at the theater, I discover that I have much to do in the process of getting living and working permits in Berlin. Seems that you need both. I have a letter from the Berlin Ballet that I am hired there as a dancer. I am told to go to get a working permit in an obscure section of Berlin. After U-Bahn and bus journeys, I make it to this very official looking building. I go in and I am abruptly informed that I cannot have a working permit until I have a living permit, and that requires me to go to the completely other side of the city. Frustrated but determined to follow the rules, I head back, retrace my steps, and move towards another location and government building. I remember the day. It is pouring rain and miserably cold, that wet cold that chills you to the bone. I get to the second building and walk in feeling like a drenched and bedraggled cat, only to be told that they cannot possibly give me a living permit because I did not have a working permit. I am trying everything not to snap at those employees, only following the very strict German laws. I was quickly seeing how Hitler could take over. If you made things the law, then the Germans were excellent at following those rules and laws to the letter, even when they did not make sense or when systems were not communicating clearly with each other, such as now. I explained that I was sent there because they already told me that I could not have a working permit without a living permit. After much to do, I get them on the phone with each other and work it out. While I had time for this back and forth, I did not want them to know that. I complained that I had to be back at rehearsals. This fiasco destroyed one day, and at the end of this very frustrating time, made worse because of the language barrier, I was no closer than at the beginning of this day. I go back to the Deutsche Oper and talk with the secretary explaining my problem. She gets on the phone and works her magic. Clearly, she had done this before. I don't know why I was not told to start with her. She calmly explains to me that tomorrow I will have to go to the living permit building, and they have agreed to give me a 2-week living permit. With that, I will go back to the working permit place, and they will give me a 2-week working permit. I instantly see a looming future problem, and I ask the obvious question. Does that mean I will have to go back in 2 weeks and do this all over again? She smiled and said, "Welcome to German bureaucracy." Then she explained that after 2 weeks, they will then give me a living and working permit for a month, and then 6 months, and then finally a year. Once I have the year permits, they will automatically renew with a letter sent from the theater. I think, okay, at least there will be an end to this at some point. The gloominess of Berlin was punctuated by my quest for sunlight. I felt like a Texas sunflower desperate for a bright, sunlit spot, but I was trapped in some foggy, damp, clammy, and wet foreign land with just enough light to survive, but not enough to thrive. The language barrier was challenging every day because of this company. They spoke many languages, not just German and English. There were many Eastern Europeans and Russians. There were South Americans, Colombians, and Brazilians, so Spanish and Portuguese. There were French dancers, Icelandic dancers, Danish, Swedish, British, South Africans, Australians, and Egyptians. The overwhelm of so many languages hit my nervous system while I was trying to sort just German and English. It was trying and exhausting. I felt as if my head was a washing machine filled with various words from other languages, and they were mixing more than they were managing to sort into appropriate places. The dancers would playfully tease, saying, "Suzanne, say something so we can all laugh." I would happily play along with this game because it helped me to learn. But things were getting to me. I felt very lonely. I was still living with the nuns, even though they were so very kind to me in all ways. I just wanted to get out on my own. I wanted to have my own apartment. I wanted to feel grown up. Everything felt stuck. My ballet career was going clearly nowhere. My personal life was minimal. I was not performing at all. The weather was shitty. In fact, I called it scheiße Wetter, or shit weather. I would go to the studios early to close the windows, and that the Putzfrauen had opened to clear out the stinky and sweaty smells of hardworking ballet dancers, and to hopefully find one small spot of sunlight that came in through the windows in the morning. I would lay on the floor and try to pretend I was back in the heat and warmth of Texas. But everything was getting to me. Through the grapevine, the ballet grapevine, I hear that Zurich Ballet is having an audition. Instantly, my ears perk up. Patricia Neary, the artistic director of Zurich Ballet, was a tall New York City ballet dancer. I did not realize until later that she had worked for Gert Reinholm as ballet mistress from 1971 to 1973. Her sister, Colleen Neary, had given me my Ford Foundation scholarships each year to go to the summer programs at SAB. I thought, this might be my in. Since I am not dancing or in any rehearsals, I put in my application, got a plane ticket, and prepared to sneak out to this audition. Fortunately, we had 2 days off together right when the audition was happening. I needed to leave early to catch my flight the day before, and I had arranged a hotel for the one night so I could be fresh for the audition first thing in the morning. I had a flight scheduled after the audition that evening and to get back in time to regroup in Berlin and consider my next move if I got the job. Excited for the first time in months, I got everything ready and I was out the door, off to claim my next shot at a ballet career. Zurich was a ballet company that did many Balanchine ballets, and that was my home base. I was sure I had a shot at this job. I get there, get to my hotel, nervous and ecstatic to be out of Berlin's war-torn mood. I slept soundly and waked refreshed and ready to shine bright. I get to the theater, and to my shock, I am suddenly in a room with over 100 girls preparing to audition. I was stunned. I did not expect this type of crowd in Zurich, maybe in New York City, but not here. I put on my shoes and start warming up. I have my headshots, resume, and ballet photos. And an administrator comes in to take them and gives us numbers that are recorded on our paperwork, and I pin the number on my leotard. The audition begins, and I'm feeling confident. Quickly, they start cutting girls. A ballet class usually lasts for an hour and a half. This class lasted over 3 hours. If that sounds exhausting, you would be right. After 3 hours, we are down to about 25 girls. I am one of the chosen few. That is when they ask us to put on pointe shoes as we are going to do variations. I think, what? Variations? Are you serious? They were very serious. The Swiss are probably more stoic than Germans, and that is saying something. Their faces give away nothing. The time keeps ticking away, and I realize that I have a plane to catch. I did not expect an audition to last all day. We started at 9 a.m., and I had a flight at 7 p.m. It was now 3 p.m., and we still had variations to do, and I did not know how long that was expected to go. The whittling away continues, and eventually we are left with 3 girls, a Swiss girl, who is amazing, another American, and myself. Patricia Neary told all of us, ladies, all of you are amazing, and I would be happy to bring each of you into the company. However, I have only one spot. So know that you all did really well, and I am going to let you know my decision through the mail. Thank you for coming. It was lovely to get to know all of you. And that was that. I rush to the airport, and I am off back to Berlin. A week later, I get the letter in the mail and quickly tear it open. Unfortunately, she chose the Swiss girl. She explained in the letter that she was required by the Swiss government to hire a Swiss dancer if that dancer was as skilled as any other dancers. Honestly, that Swiss dancer was better than both of us, the Americans. I knew it. While I was bummed, I did understand her reasoning. Now I am back to the dismal reality of my current existence with no possibility for early parole from the occupied territory of West Berlin. I continue looking for an apartment, but it is a completely demoralizing process. First of all, I am not speaking the language well or really effectively at all. I call and in my poor German ask about the apartment only to have the owner say, Ich nehme keine Ausländer, or I take no foreigners, and hang up on me. I would never even get to explain that I worked at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. They were not interested in renting to anyone other than Germans. I began to think this entire idea was a bad one. Perhaps my father was right. Frustrated and depressed, I decided to make a long-distance call to my teachers back in Dallas. I got Anne and Bill on the phone and explained everything about being there, not dancing, not getting an apartment, the misery of this dismal and dark city, feeling depressed, and the Zurich audition. I asked if they had any suggestions. That was when they gave me the lecture. They said, you need to stay at least 2 years. Breaking into any company is hard, and it is especially hard when you are in another country. But you don't want to look like a crazy, discontented artist constantly changing ballet companies. It makes you look emotionally unstable, and no company wants to put a lot of energy and time into developing you for you to only want to quit and leave at something small. You have to show that you are a dancer, that you can take the pressure, not a dancer that quits when things are not going their way. They told me to grow up and realize that this was a career that requires sacrifices. Appropriately chastised and put back in my place, I agreed and said that regardless of what was going on here, I would stay for the 2 years. Almost immediately after the Zurich audition and call to my old teachers, I was cast in Giselle, not as anything important. I was a lady in waiting for the prince and his entourage in Act 1. Let me be clear, this is not a dancing part. It is an acting, walking part. Not much is being asked of me. I just walk on with the hunting party and have conversations about how quaint the local peasants are and watch them dance for the prince and the lords and the ladies, and then exit when Giselle begins to go insane. My first performance as a professional dancer would be in Giselle. Little did I know how instrumental this ballet would be in my career. In that moment, all I knew was that I was getting a chance to be on the Berlin stage. I would be on stage with Vladimir Gelvin and Eva Evdokimova, and that was enough in that moment. I was going to be the best lady in the court ever. I had to tell the nuns that I was going to be in after curfew because of the performance. I let the Mother Superior know, and she said that one of the nuns would wait up for me. That night, I was not nervous. I was excited to be doing anything. My gown was lovely, and the hair ladies introduced themselves, and I got the experience of having professional wig makers and costumers make me into royalty. It was very fun. On stage, I felt graceful and special. It was fun, even doing such a small part. In this character, I just needed to look like a rich woman on a hunt with her man, enjoying the countryside and being entertained by the local peasants. Regardless, it was wonderful to just put on stage makeup and be on a live stage in front of an audience. After the show, I took the subway home and was grateful for the nun waiting for me. I tried to tell her all about it in my broken German. She smiled and nodded in approval. I opened the wooden doorway to my room and fell into bed, satisfied for the moment that I had done something. After all, things after that started things started to pick up. I had more rehearsals and things to do. I wondered if Patricia Neary called Garrett Reinholm to get information about me. I suspect that she did. The ballet world is small, much smaller in my day than now. Perhaps it made him realize that I was doing nothing and that he better at least try to put me into something or I would leave. I will never know, but I'm pretty sure that I am right. At least I finally had work that kept me learning and my mind occupied. Shortly after that, I got my first apartment directly across the street from the theater. While it was very tiny, it was next door to another dancer and her husband. I got the apartment because the old man who lived there had died and his ex-wife was trying to get rid of the apartment and all his belongings. This apartment was 21 quadrat meters, which translates to 226 square feet. It was a studio with a bed, a corner table, a chair, 2 sets of dishes, and place settings, 2 pots, 2 cups. You get the idea. It was very small, with a refrigerator that is under the cabinet in the tiny kitchen with 2 burners and no oven. I had to wash my clothes in the bathtub by hand, but it was home and it was mine, and I had my first apartment to myself. So I was beginning to feel like I was having a more normal life. I had so much to learn, and I was only at the beginning of the cycle that would be so difficult that there would be many moments when it could have taken my very life. The next 4 years in Berlin, I had some of the hardest moments of my life. What was to come were going to be so difficult that everything else in my life would be measured by them and compared to them for the rest of my life. I would come to know that if you could survive 4 years in Berlin during the Cold War with the walls still up, that I could weather anything. Thanks, everyone.